Today is Sunday, October the 20th, 2024, and I decided to make a video to respond to the question, who trains the wife after the mother has prepared the daughter to receive a husband? And before I get into my response to that, I'd like to show you a series of ecumenical religious posts asking various questions over the course of the last week, which I think have brought us into this particular discussion here. So let's start with that. The first thing I'd like for us to do is to address this word train, because there is a difference between training, teaching, and leading, which includes guiding. When being trained, typically a skill is being shaped for a specific use. This includes an understanding of what the expectation is of the trainer and how application of the training will be evaluated by the trainer to ensure that the skill is properly used for the purpose the trainer intends. The two most common forms of training are obedience, meaning that in the presence of the trainer, a skill can be called upon on demand by the trainer, and behavioral, which means there are social expectations not already seen that are then trained so that whether the trainer is present or not, those behaviors can be expected. In making the differential between training and teaching, you'll note if you go back that I was very careful not to use a reference to either an animal or a person as I tried to explain the different types of training and their purpose and function. Because people who are in jobs that require specific skill trainings are very familiar with the process of having to participate in training for the jobs for which they are employed. But when you use words like teaching, there are other expectations in order for learning to occur. You hear things like study, which is not often necessary with training because the expectation is that you will leave the training with the skill set you need to be able to implement them immediately. Learning something requires a level of commitment to that learning. If the motivation is a paycheck, then you are more eager to receive the training to have the capacity to implement what you have learned immediately. If it is to gain a certain type of certification, then of course you are invested in the long-term learning because you want to acquire the credential that's necessary. These are different kinds of teaching than is asked in the question. But it is necessary in understanding why these words are important, especially for women in 2024, which brings me back to the original question. I blame those who worship the God of Abraham, which included his nephew Lot, because unlike his brother Nahor, who only had one wife, none of Abraham's children were able to observe a father and a mother so in love with each other that he would defend her against any adversary who might come to separate the two of them. And because of that, you cannot have the experience of a mother properly raising her daughters. In that same line of thinking, anything else I say from this point forward applies to genetic women who have given birth to biological daughters. I cannot offer advice or support around non-genetic females and believe that they deserve their own voice in this conversation. However, for those mothers and fathers who have together had a biological daughter, this information may be helpful to them. So with that being said, I'd like to point you to the scripture in the Bible that is most often referenced as the perfect woman. What is important to note about Proverbs 31 is that this is a message of a mother to her son about the ideal wife. This is not a message written by a woman for her biological daughter, nor is it written by her biological father. This is a message from a mother to her son of the ideal woman. I will humbly submit to you that I have completed every checkbox under Proverbs 31. With that being said, please take note of then what happened to me in my life, having been able to acquire all of the skills and the traits for which Lemuel's mother felt were necessary for a woman to be worthy of a king as husband. Given that his mother was aware that these were honorable traits, where would she have learned all of these skills to prepare her to be a capable wife? When you look at this unrealistic list of expectations for one person, how long do you think it would take to gain mastery in each of these areas? When you look at 1 Corinthians 13, which is a much more realistic expectation for not only a capable wife, but also for a capable husband. When you come to verses 9 through 12, what do you think is meant by, for we know only in part, and we prophesy only in part, but when the complete comes, the partial will come to an end. And when I was a child, I spoke like a child. I thought like a child. I reasoned like a child. When I became an adult, I put an end to childish ways. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then we will see face to face. Now I only know in part. Then I will know fully, even as I have been fully known. This is a healthy family tree. You see two sets of parents, one with a biological son, the other with a biological daughter, who have joined together as one family in the best interest of their children and their children's children. This is the answer to the question, who continues to provide support and leading for the wife after the mother and also the biological father have prepared her to receive a husband. The same is true for parents of a biological son who have prepared their son to receive a wife. It is their vested interest in the couple's success that allow them to provide teaching, leading, and wisdom through eternity to ensure that they stay together and that they raise healthy children who also find their eternal partners. So you see, this is another way that families begin to expand and join together. Why is this a problem in 2024? Do you know your neighbors? If you do you know your neighbors well enough that should your son and daughter come together and choose to be eternal partner, that you'd be able to work together to ensure that they stay together and are able to raise your grandchildren into a healthy lineage? Why is this a barrier for people? I hope this makes sense to someone. I'll leave the last word with my daughter, who wrote her first book when she was 7 years old. I'm glad to see that she is writing again, and I'd like to give her the last word on the matter.
It's titled 2 Thessalonians 2:9. The card has been declined. The mirage has been lifted. The fool's gold is crumbling. This is a poor imitation of royalty. The signs of fraud are undeniable. This is counterfeit. These actions are punishable by the law. What is spoken in the darkness will be heard in the light. The lies whispered in the closet will be proclaimed on the rooftops. You've been summoned to report to the judge.